Welcome to the Bill Kelly Podcast, critical discussions in critical times. Here's your host, Bill Kelly.
Hey, welcome once again. This is the Bill Kelly Podcast, critical discussions in these critical times. I'm your host, Bill Kelly. As we do this podcast, by the way, this is Easter Sunday. A happy Easter. Hope it's a great and family time for each and every one of you. That also means, of course, that we're, 1 week and 1 day away from the general election. April 28th, of course, is election day here in Canada, but the advanced voting has already started. I want to talk more about that in just a couple of minutes. One of the things that has been the theme, I guess, even long before the election was called by Prime Minister Carney some weeks ago now, this was going to be a change election. And Pierre Poilievre, of course, has been banging that home, or trying to anyway, probably for a couple of years now since he's been the leader of the party. Change, it's got to be a change election. And it will be a change election, but probably not the way that Poilievre and a lot of the Conservatives thought it was going to be. And let's explain that for just a second. When we look at what was going on just a few months ago, with Justin Trudeau as the Prime Minister and the leader of the Liberal Party, etc., they had sunk. I mean, they were not just down in the polls. I mean, they were on life support, even on life support. I mean, things were pretty ugly. You had veteran MPs and party members that were just going to say, "That's it. I'm out of here. I'm not going to run again. I'm not going to be part of this and I don't want to get part of the election." They were crumbling. And make no two ways about it. This was a party that was in disarray, frankly didn't have any faith in the person who was leading them, and didn't have any faith in the future of their party anyway. So that was then. That changed, of course, when Trudeau finally stepped down and Mark Carney became the leader of the Liberal Party. That's change. Now, it's not the kind of change that like I say, the Conservatives wanted, but it's change. And explain exactly, and you don't, I'm not just trying to mollycoddle this, and I'm not trying to maneuver this. It's a legitimate exercise here. We're into hockey playoffs now. This NHL playoffs started this past week. So let me use, like so many Canadians are doing these days, a hockey analogy, okay? If you've got a team that's not performing well, like the Liberals had been, you don't fire the team, you fire the coach. Because the coach is the one who makes the decisions. The coach is the one who decides how they're going to play, what the rules are going to be. You know, the style they're going to play, who's going to be on what line. It's all up to the coach, not the players. If you're a Leaf fan, Austin Matthews doesn't decide who his line mates are going to be. Austin Matthews doesn't decide on the strategy when they go to play Tampa Bay or Florida, or in this case, the Ottawa Senators. It's the coach. It's all on the coach. Well, politics is pretty much the same thing. The leader of the party is the coach / captain of the team. They decide the policy. And I think a lot of Liberals will readily admit now that they weren't comfortable, nor were they confident in Justin Trudeau as being the coach anymore. They didn't like the direction it was going in. But if you're on the team and the coach is saying this is the way we're going to play, you do it that way. That's all there is to it. You may not agree with this policy on defense or this policy on housing or whatever the case might be, but this guy at the top or person at the top, they call the shots. That's all there is to it. So the Liberals made a strategic move, just like, for instance, the Leafs did last year. This is the team that, of course, hasn't won the Stanley Cup since 1967. I don't need to remind Leaf fans of that. But they made a coaching change in the offseason. They bring Berube in, made a couple of changes with the lineup, but basically it was the same core people, but a different approach, a different attitude from a different coach who's going to say, this is the way we're going to do things now. And lo and behold, the end of the regular season's over. The Leafs first place in their division. When's the last time that happened? Now, I don't know how far they're going to go, but the point is a coaching change and a coaching philosophy change can make a world of difference. So when I hear people like, Poilievre, for instance, saying, well, it's the same Liberal team. No, there was some talent on that Liberal team. It wasn't being used properly, I think, and I think a lot of people within the party and a lot of people in this country didn't think it was being used properly. But now you've got a different coach, and you've got a different approach to the concerns and to the challenges facing these days. And whether Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives like it or not, the numbers that we have seen over the last number of weeks indicate that Canadians kind of like the change. They're buying into that. I mean, Carney and the Liberals have steadily been in the lead. I mean, as we do this podcast right now on Easter Sunday, the polling I've seen today indicates about a 5.5, 6 point lead for the Liberals, maintaining the lead that they've had off and on for most of this campaign. We don't know how that's going to translate when they start counting the votes on the 28th, but a pretty good indication that a team, in other words, the Liberal team, that was really down in the dumps and that Canadians just didn't want to have anything to do with, all of a sudden seems to be, at least so far, the party of choice for Canadians. Canadians are aware, I think, of the challenges. I mean, Trump is certainly part of it, in trade and a number of other issues that are ongoing right now. But you can't blame Mark Carney for the policies of Justin Trudeau. And even this morning, as I'm watching the morning news programs, and they've got Poilievre talking, he's out on the West Coast this Easter weekend. And again, he's talking about Justin Trudeau. And as Carney said at the last debate, the English language debate, he's gone. All right? You wanted to fight Justin Trudeau in this election. It didn't happen. Get over it and deal with the exact things that we're dealing with now. So don't look in the rearview mirror. And it's something that I think we as Canadians get our heads around. I'm not so sure that Mr. Poilievre has, but that's the way things are going. Now, is that change going to be enough? Are Canadians satisfied with that change? So far, the polling seems to indicate that, yeah, they're leaning that way. They seem to think that, yeah, this guy seems to know what he's talking about. And for a lot of Liberals, or for a lot of Canadian voters, frankly, it wasn't going to take a whole lot of convincing to do that. I've been covering politics for a long time, and I was never a fan of Justin Trudeau for a whole lot of reasons. I just didn't think the guy had the chops to be able to do the job that had to be done. But certainly back in 2015, God knows the Liberals needed a change. They chose Trudeau, and well, he won election in a big way. So you figured, okay, maybe he can grow into the job. Well, I'm not at all pleased with his performance, and I think a lot of Canadians weren't pleased with it. So he's gone. There's a new guy there, a new sheriff in town, somebody else making the decisions right now. And so far, from what they've heard, Canadians seem to be gravitating to Carney and say, hey, I think this is the guy. We need some strong leadership. We need somebody with experience and some expertise in the challenges ahead. And, one party leader has had no experience in international affairs or in economics or anything else. The other guy has an incredible track record, and Canadians are going to make the choice on that. So that's the challenge that's facing it right now. I don't fall for the rhetoric, and I hope most Canadians don't fall for the rhetoric that you'd blow everybody else out. That doesn't happen, and nor should it happen. What we want here, again, you want the most talented people that you think can do the job. And this is, as we've talked about before, a very pivotal time in this election. And right now, anyway, with 1 week to go before the actual voting takes place, we seem to have an indication that Canadians are starting to think that maybe Carney is the guy. Maybe this is the guy who should be leading us right now. Time will tell, of course. On the morning of the 29th, I guess, we'll have a much clearer picture of that, won't we? However, it does lead me to what else I wanted to talk about today. As we sit here today on Easter Sunday doing this podcast, the Conservative Party and Pierre Poilievre have yet to release a costed platform. And that matters. And I'll tell you, the Liberals have, of course, the NDP have done that. I think it's not just something that you want to get out there as part of your campaign. I think it's an absolute responsibility of the political parties to have that out there so we have the numbers in front of us. And we don't from the Conservatives. Now, I don't know why it's taking so long. One of my colleagues who I was talking about this just the other day said, you know why? He says they didn't think they needed one. Poilievre was so far ahead of Trudeau in the public opinion polls, he probably figured, look, I'm just going to coast a victory here. Well, hello, reality check. You got a race in your hands and you're behind right now. So I don't know if they're scrambling to try to put some numbers to this. I don't know if they don't want to put numbers to this because they're talking a lot about this and that and the other thing that they're promising. But my man, Poilievre, seems to be spending an awful lot of his time just criticizing Carney as opposed to actually presenting viable options. And even some of the platforms that he has talked about right now are really just regurgitations of what Stephen Harper did some years ago. And Canadians have already rejected most of that. But the fact is that voting has already started. The advance polls started on Good Friday, and they're carrying on, of course, this long weekend. So millions, as a matter of fact, as of now, on Sunday afternoon, on Easter Sunday, I'm told that over 2 million Canadians have already voted in advance polls, and that's apparently a record-setting number. And that's only counting the advance polls. I mean, there's mail-in votes. There's a number of different ways that you can do this. But Canadians are invested in this right now. And they can look and see, okay, here's the platform for the Liberals. Like it or not, it's there for we as voters to analyze. The NDP have presented theirs. Again, I'm not judging it, not this time anyway, about what's in there. But we have a number, and we can talk about what's good, bad, or ugly about that. We still don't have it for the Conservatives, and which I find head-scratching. They want people to support them. Canadians just supposed to go with the rhetoric and the empty promises of a party leader like Pierre Poilievre, or are they going to put numbers down? Canadians have already voted. and will continue to vote in these advanced polls, yet they don't have the information that's necessary because the party, including Poilievre, have not supplied it. I think that's terrible. It's egregious. And I think it's a failure of their responsibility as people involved in this election to not present the facts and not present the numbers that they think they need to try to govern this country. It's a huge failing. Poilievre's promise, again, as I record this on Easter afternoon, is, well, it's coming soon. Yeah, I don't buy that, and I think most Canadians don't buy that too. But I think it just goes to show that this is a party that just doesn't seem to be prepared for the nuances and the shifting that can happen during an election campaign. And I, for one, am very concerned about that these guys really don't have their act together, and that's somewhat problematic. The other thing that I think we need to look into here, the fact that here on Easter Sunday, 1 week before the election, the Conservatives still don't have their costed platform out. And it seems to me to be part of a pattern we see with Poilievre. This guy doesn't like scrutiny. He just doesn't like scrutiny. He doesn't like the fact that as soon as he releases this, people are going to analyze this and question him about this and question some of the numbers and some of the projections. He's not comfortable with it. And even the odd time, and it's only an odd time because they don't really let the media and the journalists have much of an opportunity to question Mr. Poilievre at any one of these campaign stops. But even the odd time that it does happen, he still gets contentious. He gets bristling and just he doesn't seem to want to answer that. There's a question about handguns, and is he going to repeal that law? Well, he evaded that and simply started talking about past bills that the Liberals had passed. So what are you going to do, buddy? That's the question they're asking. We know history, okay? That's prologue. We know that. What are you planning to do? Well, again, he was evasive about that, about the numbers that are going forth, too. And I think it's doing a great disservice to Canadian voters not to have that information and to have a party leader who just can't be candid. You're in the spotlight. You want to be a party leader? You want to be prime minister someday? I mean, that's his aspiration. Then you bloody well better get used to the fact that you're going to be scrutinized and you're going to be under the spotlight. That's the job. That's part of the job. It's not something you can evade. I know Harper tried to as long as he could when he was in office. He tried to orchestrate his press meetings too. It's not fair to voters to be able to run your operation like that. Canadians deserve better, and they're not getting it right now from Mr. Poilievre. And I find that bothersome, and I think Canadians are going to find that bothersome as well. And it's all a matter of transparency. And you may remember at the beginning of this campaign, Mr. Poilievre proudly said that his campaign, his party's campaign in this election was going to be the most transparent of all time. Well, that's not happening. As a matter of fact, it seems to be one of the most secretive of all time, and basically not allowing the kind of scrutiny and the kind of back and forth that we as voters, I think, deserve to hear from our leaders. And this is not to suggest that what we heard from the Liberals and from the NDP is perfect. And it's going to be analyzed, and they're going to go through the good, the bad, and the ugly of it over the next 7 days, and that's to be expected. And some people are going to agree, some people not agree. But how can you do that with the Conservatives when they have, at this point anyway, failed to produce the information that we as voters need? I find it just reprehensible that a party would be that irresponsible, especially this late into the campaign. Is it going to have an impact on voting? Well, it should. As to just how much of an impact, well, I guess we're going to find out in a couple of days just how extensive that's going to be. But I really am bothered when I see the party just doesn't seem to have their act together. You've got to show us who you are and what you are. And I think it's probably asking way too much to try to expect a party, in this case the opposition leader, but a guy who wants to be prime minister someday, to present a view of what they're going to do and present hard and true facts. I mean, I am bothered, again, continually by stories that I see when they finally do some scrutiny. And, of course, you can't do it to Poilievre's face. What they do afterwards, of course, is after the debates or after some of these speeches or these campaign stops, the experts will analyze exactly what he said and say, no, that's not true. This isn't true at all. And I think Canadians are wise to that. I'd like to think that we're a pretty educated people and we understand what's going on. And this, as we mentioned in one of our previous podcasts, this dystopian picture that Poilievre tries to paint of Canadians being afraid to go out at night, because something might happen to them, that crime is rampant. Well, the numbers indicate differently, by the way. And I have seen the response to those sorts of scenarios that Mr. Poilievre was talking about from people in Vancouver and in Toronto and in Montreal who simply say that's just not true. It's not the way he's fighting. I can't tell you when it did happen, when he was talking about these dark, dangerous streets at night where people were afraid to venture out because they didn't know who they were going to run into or what kind of calamity they were going to face. That's exactly how the people of Ottawa felt, Mr. Poilievre. when the truckers were there and basically holding that city hostage for a number of days. And you would know about that because you were with the truckers. You were giving them coffee and donuts and endorsing them and say, yeah, keep it up. That's it. Which I think legitimately had a question that a lot of Ottawa citizens were asking. And I think a lot of us were watching what was going on in Ottawa during that is, whose side are you on, Pierre? And I'm not so sure Canadians have got a strong answer to that, or maybe one they do have that you may not like. We'll see what happens next week. That's it for this edition of the podcast. So much going on, and I know that as we get into the home stretch here, there's going to be a lot more coming up and some responses and some Hail Marys at the last minute. That's part of the political process, too, and we'll certainly talk about it as it happens. As always, you can catch us, of course, on Substack, on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, of course, getting some great response and some feedback from you, and on Blue Sky as well. Thanks, as always, to our producer, Madeline Kelly, for the great work that she's doing and continues to do on the podcast. And until next time, I'm Bill Kelly. Stay in touch and stay informed.
Bill Kelly Podcast brought to you by Wizen's Law, personal injury lawyers. Listen, you didn't choose to get injured, but you can choose the right lawyer. Wizen's Law, 905-522-1102 or wizenslaw.com.